All right. Welcome, everybody, to Artful Tuesdays. Today we have Maria, and we're going to be talking about love, or the Canonization poem by John Donne. Now, this is a poem. Actually, before we talk about love and canonization and the poem and this everything, everyone's starting to get to know you a little bit. But Maria, we've talked about this a while back, but really briefly, what's your interest in poetry?
So I did poetry in school
Mhm.
diligently, had to sit all the exams as part of, the literature class. And I probably didn't enjoy it back then because it was kind of forced. And this whole, I think sometimes school, is wasted on the young.
As
So
is
it
love,
wasn't
maybe?
as is love sometimes, yes. So yeah, and I think I started to enjoy poetry a little bit later in life, when it was kind of done, when I started reading it for my own pleasure. To say that I know a lot about poetry or the right way to analyze a poem, probably not. I'm just a layman consumer of poetry, but I do love it. The timelessness of rhyme, feelings that are expressed. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a great read. It's always a lot of fun. There's so much to unpack in a poem. You can read the same poem 10 times and find new things. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And yeah, thank you again for saying the pleasure part, because this is something that I've been pushing for a long time, is that sometimes it doesn't seem obvious right away that a poem could be pleasurable, like actually pleasurable, but it is. And I think art in general could expand your understanding of what pleasure even means, right?
Absolutely.
It's not superficial like an ice cream cone, or eating ice cream or having sex. Those are the only two things people could think of when it comes to pleasure. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, there's intellectual pleasure. There's the pleasure of the sound of words, the meaning of words, understanding something, a new, there's so many. And then just the aesthetic pleasure is its own category of thing in art. And I think there's a quote that I don't remember at all from Rand, but it's something along these lines about entertainment and art. And that it seems like people think that there's something that's entertaining, that's not artistic and it's only pleasurable, it's only superficial and joyful, superficial. And then there's art, which is high-minded, intellectual, not pleasurable, right? And Ayn Rand's point was that that's a viewpoint, or that's a byproduct of the mind-body dichotomy, that
Yeah.
great art, fine art, the greatest art of all time, should be some of the most pleasurable art you experience, and the most profoundly pleasurable art that you experience. And if it's not your fault. A lot of times, like myself, like Maria, it's because of our upbringing to some degree, right? We didn't get that, experience with art. It was not put in the way that it should, presented in the way that it should have been presented.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with poetry, just like with paintings, they intimidate people. And there's this notion that you're expected to get it straight away, what the author was trying to say or what the artist was trying to convey. And it's okay not to understand it the first time round, or find
Absolutely.
things later. You can look at a painting for a very long time, forget about it for years, revisit it again with new eyes, and poetry is the same. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's 100% correct. In fact, sometimes that's the purpose, right? Is that
Yeah.
you aren't supposed to just immediately grasp it. It's supposed to be contemplated. You churn it in your mind for a little bit. And I think this poem in John Donne is a really good example of that, where John Donne, who's he most of his stuff is published posthumously in 1633 or later. So he's a poet that's a little earlier than many of the poets that we've been doing on Artful Tuesdays in the past. Now, before we read the Canonization by John Donne, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I think are one of the themes, actually. I'm going to kind of ruin a theme, but without giving you his view, but the theme is basically about love, right? We could say that that's essentially what now he has a particular view of love, but I thought first you and I could talk a little bit about love, and then read him talk about what he's saying about love, and then maybe if we've learned anything or what we can learn from that. And I'll start with like the idea of love is something that is possibly, one thing I've discovered about love is it's possibly something that is put it's an aspect of growing civilized culture putting on to people. So it's, I don't know that love is actually biological. I think lust and the desire, like a pure physical desire, that part of it, that animal meat part is very natural. Now, as I say that, I actually think about, it automatically makes me think of the sex scenes in Atlas Shrugged and Fountainhead, where Ayn Rand's whole point is that that's not true, what I just said. So actually, but what I'm trying to get at is that there does seem to be like this high-minded aspect of love that not all cultures have, not at all times, and they don't have it to the same degree. And for me, I think it's like the physical part of love is also the spiritual, right? That's what Ayn Rand points out. Like Dagny says that to Hank, right? Like she says, come to me for all of your base, physical, because I understand that there's more to it, that it's actually a spiritual thing. And it's a reflection but I think what it is that who you become attracted to and why you become attracted to that person sexually is an aspect of your deeper character. It's a reflection. You see something in them that is deeply important to you, even if you haven't fully identified it, right? That's why it can be so confusing, is it's not like I like, chocolate cake. So I see a chocolate cake and I really like, I would get, oh yeah, chocolate cake, let's eat it. With humans, there's so much more complex that you could see like one, a person for a moment, feel an attraction, and then realize that there's more to them and you hate them, really, or the opposite, right? Like this is the cliche in romantic comedies where you hate the person, it feels like, and it frustrates you and like, get away from me and stuff. And then you learn that they have so much more to them. Like the cliche of every romantic comedy is the theme is basically about sight and seeing, because love is about being seen. So these are some of my random thoughts, even some backtracking on my part about love. I have more, but I'm going to stop because I think, I want to set up different views of love and what Donne has, and then maybe we can come full circle at the end. What do you think?
Well, not to simplify, but I agree with everything that you've said.
Moving on. Well, all right.
The song Love always comes to my mind. Like, L is for the way you look at me.
Oh, wait, keep going. Yeah.
No, I would never sing, even to myself. What can I say? I love love. And I think maybe some of your viewers, the ones that have seen me maybe before, maybe they've seen me talk about relationships and love and just trying to look at all of that through the prism of objectivism, but not just on the Ayn Rand Center UK YouTube channel. So I'm not a love guru or relationship advisor or psychologist, but I always like to talk about these things because I love love. And it's one of the most timeless themes and feelings, and it's been around for so long. And like you said, this poem was published in 1633, which is a very long time ago already, but love has existed for much longer than that. And the aspect of seeing, like you said, you see someone, you might like them or not, but it's once you get to know them, it's what I think what we love about ourselves, and we see in another person, we fall in love with those things in them.
And there's like again, I think different views of love that we get in our culture. So like, I do a thing, Literary Canon Club, where we read literature from Homer to Goethe. And so it's a wide span, and we get different views of love. So we get what Homer in the Iliad and the Odyssey, what he looks at and views of love, the concept of love. So there's lust, there's sex, there's love, right? And you get all those views in his work. And then classical Athens, you get views of like, what does Sophocles think of love? What does Euripides think of love? What does Aeschylus think of love? You get these different views. And like, we just read Ovid for one of our groups, and he wrote a story a series of stories called The Metamorphoses. And the whole point of the Metamorphoses is it's all these Greek, people think of it as just all these Greek stories. If you know this story at all of Ovid's Metamorphoses, this is first century AD. But really what it is like what the metamorphic like challenge or not challenge, the metamorphic force he has it, like it's almost like spiritual, or it's like a force of nature, like gravity, is love. And it's what transforms everything. And there's, and even the perspective of love starts with like this really, you know, in the early days of the gods, like creation gods, and moving down into, you know, the Trojan myth. And it has this whole span of time. Love is kind of what connects them, but it's different views of love. So there's like very harsh views of love, where it's like just a very powerful God has a very strong feeling for a woman and he just rapes her, right? Like that's the early, but then it starts evolving over time. And the later stories are more, you know, the kind of thing that we would think of romantically between a man and a woman. And, you know, it's just this interesting power that he gives it. And that's right. And that's the Roman, right? A kind of Roman love poet at that time. Medievals have different, but go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's the Middle Ages that kind of killed love. That the ancient, you know, romantic Greek Roman notion of love, and then the Middle Ages came, and that was a dark time to be alive because no one was living well in the Middle Ages. So I think I don't know. I feel maybe like love has had a bit of a up and down reputation in history.
Yeah, absolutely.
So which I think is kind of to the point of the time at which this poem was written and the themes that follow through, but we can get into that.
Yeah, so let's get into it. But that's a really good point. And I think because we're going to read, you know, this is a Renaissance view of love, right? It's a little bit more Renaissance. You're going to see a little bit of Christian views though, as well. So we'll get into the metaphor. So let me pop this on the screen. And Maria, can you see that?
Make sure. I can, yes.
Okay, good. So I have been chosen to do the reading, but as anybody who knows me knows that I do love that. So thank you for letting me do the thing that I love, which is to read poetry. I love reading poetry. So thank you. All right. So the Canonization by John Donne, 1633. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love, or chide my palsy or my gout, my 5 gray hairs or ruined fortune flout. With wealth, your state, your mind with arts improve. Take you a course, get you a place. Observe his honor or his grace, or the king's reel or his stamped face contemplate. What you will approve, so you will let me love. Alas, alas, who's injured by my love? What merchant's ships have my sighs drowned? Who says my tears have overflowed his ground? When did my colds a forward spring remove? When did the heats which my veins fill add one more to the plague bill? Soldiers find wars, and lawyers find out still litigious men, which quarrels move, though she and I do love. Call us what you will, we are made such by love. Call her one, me another fly. We are tapers too, and at our own cost die. And we and us find the eagle and the dove. The phoenix riddle hath more wit by us. We two being one are it. So to one neutral thing, both sexes fit. We die and rise the same, and prove mysterious by this love. We can die by it, if not live by love. And if unfit for tombs and hearse our legends be, it will be fit for verse. And if no piece of chronicle we prove, we'll build in sonnets pretty rooms. As well a well-wrought urn becomes the greatest ashes as half-acre tombs. And by these hymns, all shall approve us canonized for love. And thus invoke us, you whom reverend love made one another's hermitage. You to whom love was peace, that now is rage. Who did the whole world's soul contract and drove into the glasses of our eyes, so made such mirrors and such spies that they did all to you epitomize. Countries, towns, courts, beg from above a pattern of your love. All right.
Beautiful poem.
Yeah, it's very, and like Maria said at the beginning, if you didn't understand it, you're a human. That's okay. Like you're not supposed to understand it the first time. So with this poem, I would say not even the third or fourth or fifth time. It's a bit of a complex poem, but why don't we go through it and kind of think about what's going on, what he's trying to say, and understand what this guy has to say about canonization. And that's the first question. So what is a canonization? What is that? What do you think that means?
Is that not the admission of mortals into sainthood?
Yes.
So something that makes us, yeah.
Yeah. So it's right off the bat, you should get this. The word canonization tells you a little bit about what he's saying theme wise, right? It has to do with like how in the Catholic Church you become canonized, the process of canonization, of becoming a saint. Sure. Okay.
Is there also a bit of a metaphor there where we kind of love immortalizes us?
Oh, maybe. Well,
or that love is immortal.
Love is immortal. He definitely makes that for sure. And I think, yeah, so whenever you're holding a poem like this, it's great to have those connotations. I was going to say canonization and my brain just exploded. But yeah, those connotations are very helpful. And yeah, I think there's stuff to do with immortality, gaining immortality. And because it's about love, then that's kind of the process, right? Yeah. So let's look at these first couple lines and see what we think. Maybe we should look at it, well, maybe a couple lines at a time. The whole stanza might be too much. So what do you take this first line, though, the way he starts it, by the way? For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. What do you think of that?
I love how from the start, you're kind of like slapped awake by this.
Slapped awake. That's a good way.
Yeah, slapped awake.
Yeah.
Well, you're kind of, if you know that the poem is about love, you're a bit like, whoa, this is an unusual way to start a love poem. And generally, the poem itself feels like a very sort of like passionate speech act, not a traditional love poem. It's almost like he's on a sort of like a political tirade or, some kind of like, statement. So I love how it begins with, kind of takes you and
No, I think that's great. I agree with that. It does jar you if you're, again, paying attention to the language and really feeling the language. So the first thing is like, who is he talking to? So he's talking to somebody, right? For God's sake, hold your tongue. So he's not talking to you, the listener, really. It's the narrator talking to some other party who doesn't respond. We'll find out. He says nothing in the poem. But, he's the narrator just kind of starts in there. For God's sake, hold your tongue. So someone was just talking, maybe giving him crap about love, right? Like giving him like, why are you in love with this? This is what. So the question is, what is the argument against love that he's been fighting against a little bit, right? For God's, you can think about like a parent or a child to a parent, like, just shut up and let me be in love. God, why do you got to try and ruin everything, right? That's how I read that first line.
So it feels like someone's teasing him about it.
There you go.
Yeah.
And how are they teasing him? What are the next couple lines?
Well, so
he's responding to something.
Yeah,
think, right?
We're getting into his physical appearance, and it appears that he's not a very young man.
There you go.
He's 5 gray hairs, ruined fortune, which means maybe he potentially lost his money, or ruined fortune could also mean that like my fate hasn't been as good. Fortune can mean either wealth or more like destiny. My child, my palsy or my gout. So he looks like he's a man of age, and maybe that's what he's being teased for.
Palsy, like in gout, by the way, would be like, older guys, they get the thicker knuckles and they shaky. Yeah. That's what that basically. So he's in his 40s. He's, or he's middle-aged, and he's got like, bad joints, and he's a little shakier than he was when he was younger. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's a man in love.
But he's a man in love.
Yeah. So.
And so like with wealth, your state, your minds with arts improve, to take you a course, get you a place, observe his honor or his grace, or the king's real, or his stamped face contemplate. So here I think he's actually kind of answering a little bit of what the guy has been accusing him of, right? And he's like,
Yes.
you know, with wealth, like, go leave me alone. With wealth, your state, like, go take care of your own fortune, you know, go improve your own life, your own way, take you a course, get you a place, like, go out in the world and, you know, do things your own way. You know, I think when he says get you a place, I had to look that up because that's a Renaissance type of a concept. And it's basically like, you know, try to get you a place in a house, like in a nobleman's house is kind of what that. So he's so he's talking to, so I'll just, a quick aside. Sometimes when you're reading older poetry, the difficulty are the slang or the way that they talked back then, which we don't have that at all. So, you know, to take you a course and that's his way of saying, get yourself some new career and job to do. And then get you a place means like, you know, go get a job in a nobleman's house of some sort, which is the normal thing you would do. Or observe his honor or his grace or his king, you know, like think about the king, you know, his stamped face, like get you some wealth. You're like, that's the physical coin that you were talking about, right? Like go get the stamped face. That's what you would put like the king's face on money.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he's basically, that's his reprove to his interlocutor. And he's telling his interlocutor, go leave me alone to love, right? And then, you know, yes, I'm old. Yes, I'm weird. You know, I have 5 gray hairs, ruined fortune, all that stuff. Like, and then go, you know, make money elsewhere. Do your own thing. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
And then the last thing he says is, you know, what you will approve, so you will let me love. So basically, he's saying like, do whatever you want. What's that?
Like, leave me alone. As long as you leave me alone, do it.
Yeah. Mind your business. That's a Renaissance way of saying mind your business, right? That's Renaissance talk for mind your business. That's the first stanza. So we get a sense of who the guy is, that he's talking to somebody, and that that he's making fun of him for being an old man in love. Okay. So now what's the next stanza? Do you want to read a couple lines and tell us what you think?
Sure. Alas, alas, who's injured by my love? What merchant's ships have my sighs drowned? Who says my tears have overflowed his ground? When did my colds a forward spring remove? When did the heats which my veins fill add one more to the plague bill?
Plague bill, yeah.
Plague bill, yes.
Because remember, plague was a big issue.
Yeah. Soldiers find wars and lawyers find out still litigious men which quarrels move, though she and I do love. So yeah, he continues to kind of question that person on, you know, who does my love hurt? Has my love sunk any ships? Like, have my tears flooded anyone's land? Like, why am I at fault for, you know, being in love? So someone is clearly strongly objecting to him being in love. And I guess at this point, we don't know whether it's because of who he's in love with or because of the man that he is, that he's older. So at this point, we don't know that. We don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, he's sort of just, you know, questioning, like, does my love cause anyone any pain or damage? And the answer, I'm guessing, to all these questions is no, it doesn't, because he looks very confident, you know, like there is nothing that my love has caused to any other person. Yeah. And then it finishes off with, my lady and I are sort of in love with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's 100% right. So like, if we look at the lines, you know, alas, who's injured by my love? No one, you know, so I think what he's doing with the next couple ones, questions that I think is interesting. And again, what you're saying is 100% correct. Like they are not harming he is not harming anybody by being in love. Like his internal emotion has no external ramifications. That's his point, right? So who's injured by it? Who's physically accosted? Nobody. What merchant ships have my sighs drowned? You know, it's, you know, who says my tears have overflowed his land? Like, you know, overflowed his land, like an actual flooding of land that harms people, right? That's what he's saying. There's all this famine. He even talks about the plague bill, right? Which a plague bill would be something like, we'd have a tally of all the people that died in the most recent plague. Has my love added to that tally? No, right? And so he's giving all these examples. And then he does say this line, which I think is interesting. When did my colds a forward spring remove? And, it's probably one that we skip over, but I think there's some importance to it because it indicates a little bit of what's going on in his own love and what might be an issue. Because I think what he means by my colds a forward spring remove. Do you have an idea? It looks like okay.
When did my colds a forward spring remove?
So what in a love relationship, where might there be cold in the relationship? Coldness. In his, because it's not on his side. So he's not cold. So it's possible that the colds, like a cold front that he gets, is from her. And he's saying something like, when did her lack of, her coldness toward me bring, because we don't know that she's in love with him. We just know that he's in love with her or with some person, right? Some third party. So when did my colds, I think that's a great, I, Kirk Barbera, have had some cold fronts where I've been in love with a woman and she hasn't been in love with me, but it didn't remove the spring from everybody else. So if everybody else is in a springtime of love, it didn't mess with their love. The fact that I was in that experience. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's a great
line.
It's a really great one, but it's very easy to pass over and challenge to understand that one. Yeah. And he's, he talks about soldiers find wars and lawyers find out still litigious men who argue for who like to get into law arguments. And he's saying my love doesn't stop soldiers from finding law, or my love doesn't stop lawyers from finding lawsuits to engage in. Which quarrels move those so as I love this woman. That's what he's saying. Right? There's no external aspect to or damage. Okay, next stanza. Call us what you will, we are made such by love. All right, what do you think is going on here? Why don't you give us some thoughts?
So you can say whatever you want, but my lady and I are alike. We are made such by love, so we are similar, and love makes us that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I think that's right.
Call
her one, me another fly.
So
what do you think?
We might say that we are. I don't know if there's a metaphor here to
there is a metaphor there that's weird. Again, this is one of his weird metaphors. He has a poem called The Flea. He does this with the flea too, but what are flies known for besides being pesky to people? So if you think about I don't know how to do this without giving it away, but there's two flies and then there's many flies. They don't have one or two kids. There's a lot of them. And they're known for lots of procreation.
Right. Yeah.
So I gave it away. But yeah, so me another. So basically there are two flies. I think there's there's an issue of the amount of sex that flies have. So they're having lots of sex, I think is the idea.
Right.
And but he's still being a little coy about it. He's not saying today we would just say they're having lots of sex. There's no metaphor. We're very, we don't have any romanticism in us anymore. So he makes this grand metaphor of flies. I guess another way of saying it would be we're like bunnies, right? You've heard that term where, we're that kind of, so I think this is the same kind of thing. We're doing it like bunnies. So we're doing it like flies, I think is the kind of idea.
Who knew flies were so lustful and promiscuous?
Well, I don't know if I think the idea is that if you have one or two flies, all of us, they procreate a lot. Right? Very quickly. Yeah. I think that's all he means.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it's the greatest metaphor for sex.
No, but very niche. I like that.
Exactly. It's unique. Right?
Reference.
Now what about, so tapers means candles.
Candles, yeah.
So what do you think we're tapers to and at our own cost die?
Well, so kind of burned up by our passion, Like, so we, like, if we burn out, it's like at our own cost. So yeah, he seems to be like very self-aware. That, you know, if
Yeah,
we, I don't know, if we destroy ourselves, it's because that's like we wanted to do it. I don't know, consumed by passion or something, burned up by passion, something like that.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, think about what a candle is, right? And how it
Yeah,
works. It burns on its own merits, on its
yeah,
own, you know, entity. There's no external, not so it burns out of its own accord. And I think
yes,
if he's saying that if they burn out, they burn out as well. Now there is a secret slang word that we don't know today at all. We don't use, which is die. And die does
yeah.
not. Do you know what that refers to in Renaissance?
Well, I think I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get it wrong, but you go ahead. I feel like I've heard this before.
Are you nervous? Don't get nervous. It's okay to
Yeah,
get
no,
wrong.
you go. You go.
All right, I'll tell you. So dying in medieval times means basically orgasm. And that was a slang for
Yes,
orgasm, the little death.
right.
In fact, I actually saw a movie not too long ago where they used that. It's called The Last Duel with Matt Damon. It just came out like a couple of days ago or like a week ago. And he actually, you know, he has sex with his wife and he says, "Did you have a little death or did you enjoy a little," or something like that?
Right.
And
That
he,
makes sense.
you know, and that's how they actually slang for, because they thought like, you know, it was like an instantaneous momentary death. And they literally thought like, you know, the toes curling, you know, like
Yeah.
eyes closed, eyes on the back of your head, like for that 1 second or one split second, you die literally. That's how I think they
Yeah.
really thought that. Um, and they had some other
I
very
don't blame
bizarre
them.
thinking. Yes, exactly. There you go. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an experience you don't ever experience except in that one split,
Yeah.
second experience. It's a very, yeah. So I think like, and I do enjoy that, you know, obviously death and orgasm maybe shouldn't be tied together. Maybe there's some other weird things about medieval times where they, you know, I would prefer to
Yeah.
like your little burst of life is a better way of thinking about it than your little burst of death. But, you know,
But these are the Middle Ages, so I do think there's
it's
quite
just
a few, like the references are darker.
yeah,
You
maybe
know.
it's a little bit darker. Yeah. So look at this next section here. So knowing that, we're going to get into something. Why don't you read this? Because I talk too much.
So do you mean continue from where he says,
Yeah.
and
So
we,
like, yeah. So like here.
yeah. And we in us find the eagle and the dove, the phoenix riddle hath more wit by us. We two being one are it. So to one neutral think both sexes fit. We die and rise the same and prove mysterious by this love. So yeah, there seems to be like a continuation of this burning passion, death, which could mean physically dying, like the phoenix, I guess. Reference again to the ashes, phoenix rising from the ashes and the candle burning.
Yeah.
Yeah, he ties it all
But
amazingly.
but knowing what I just told you about the death,
Yeah.
what is a phoenix? What do you think he's saying about the phoenix
So,
in this
I
case?
actually, sorry, and I just skipped. I really like that. And we and us find the eagle and the
Okay. Yeah.
dove. So the masculine, the very masculine eagle, the very feminine dove. I like that.
Well, so yeah. Okay. Good point. I'm glad you stopped there because before we get to the phoenix, you just said earlier about passion burning out,
Mhm.
right? That's one aspect of passion that we understand. But he's also bringing in this eagle and the dove imagery, which we have to think about what do we associate doves with and what do we associate eagles with. And I think masculine, feminine is one thing, but there's more to it, right? So a dove is a symbol of a lot of things. And again, with Donne, you have to really think about symbols because all of these things represent other things, right? So dove, you know, a dove is something that's more meek, is what we think of like that. It's a meek dove. Eagles we could think of as powerful, but also wise, right? And he's going to, I think what he's saying is a little bit more along the lines of, and we and us find like they have that symbiotic relationship of like meekness and you know, so there's something a little more eternal is what I'm getting here versus in comparison to the temporary passion, there's also the more eternal or more long lasting eagle and dove relationship. The wisdom and strength of an eagle with, you know, companioned with the meekness and sweetness of a dove. Because I think he's doing something with those two metaphors that is not just, this is not just a temporary passionate thing. There's something more here.
Right.
And on top of the passion, right?
Yeah.
So now the next ones I want to talk about because it's fun.
So he brings the third bird into the mix.
The third bird. There you go. Especially, there you go. I like that.
And I don't mean bird like woman. Like he's not bringing a third woman into.
Well, maybe.
So, I don't know if you have that in the US.
Not in this poem.
A bird is like a chick, a girl, right?
Yeah, chica, chick. Yeah, I got it.
So okay, the Phoenix riddle hath more wit by us. Like we embody the legend of the Phoenix.
Well, what is the Phoenix though? Like
it's someone that burns up and then is reborn from their own ashes, right? That's the legend of the Phoenix.
Yeah. So what did we just learn about death? What does it really mean?
Well, rebirth, and I guess it goes back to that canonization, immortality.
The little death. The little death. Well, I think you're related to that, but if we're talking about the little death in slang, what is he saying?
He's having a great orgasm and then he's coming back to life.
Yeah, they're having lots of it, right?
Oh, I see.
We two are being one, are it's like it's because the Phoenix dies and reborns. It's a cycle of death and rebirth. That's the whole thing. So if death means orgasm, they're having lots of orgasms. It's the kind of sexual way to take this. Now, I do think that when you're talking about immortality, I think that's part of it too. And we'll get to that when we look at the totality of it at the end. Because that's definitely part of what he's saying, but he is definitely relating to the Renaissance view of the little death. I'm very confident that that's a big part of it. Because he's saying to one neutral thing, both sexes, we die and rise the same, right? Mm-hmm. So we orgasm together, right? It's part of the togetherness that he's talking about, and prove mysterious by this love.
I'm loving this poem more and more with each line.
I thought so. So he's kind of saying like, we're becoming more like the mysterious bird, this combination of things, because that's kind of what this whole stanza is about. It's becoming. We are made by love. So I'll give people another hint about stanzas. So stanzas is like the unit of thought that's very helpful in every poem to think about what is he saying. So here he's saying, call us what you will, we are made such by love. So whatever you call us, that's what we are. So call her one, me another fly. Well, so you can call us that, but what that means is flies procreate a lot. That's true, right? We're tapers as well as flies, right? So we burn with passion, and it doesn't, like he was saying earlier, at our own cost die. So everything, the death, the orgasm, the pleasure, the pain, it's only internally with us. It has nothing to do with you. And we and us. So all of this is about coming together as one. That's what this whole stanza is about. And we in us find the eagle and the dove, right? The meekness and the strength. The Phoenix riddle hath more wit by us, right? So we together get it, this fantastical creature. We two being one are it, the Phoenix. That's the it, right? That's the pronoun it is referring to the Phoenix and the riddle. So to one neutral thing, both sexes fit, right? So that one I think is a little challenging. I'm not sure what he's meaning by that. I only get more of the two together stuff. And we die and rise.
Two bodies coming together?
That's what I saw, yeah. Two bodies coming together. We die and rise the same. Again, I think there's the immortality of dying and rebirth like in Christianity, but then there's the little death, that they're doing this the same. And prove mysterious. Now, mysterious doesn't just mean like it does to us, not knowing
magical?
Something. What's that?
More like magical.
Like magical, but in a Christian context. So like the mysteries.
The mystery.
Right. So the mysteries being like turning water to wine, a phoenix, like these fantastical creatures, but they prove mysterious, that they become those things, right? They are the magical creatures. Okay. So let's move on. We spent a lot of time on that, but I think it was a fun stanza. I hope everybody enjoyed that. Did you have anything else to say on that stanza before we moved on? Sorry.
No, I think we covered it.
Okay, so yeah, we can die by it if not by love. So what about this? Do you want to do a couple lines and tell us what you think?
Yeah. We can die by it if not by love, and if unfit for tombs and hearse our legend be, it will be fit for verse. And if thou piece of chronicle we prove, we'll build in sonnets pretty rooms, as well a wet wrought urn becomes the greatest ashes as half-acre tombs. Oh, I feel like I've lost the rhythm there. And by these hymns, all shall approve us canonized for love.
I love it.
Okay.
Yeah. We could die by it, if not live by love. Yeah, go ahead. What are you thinking?
No, I was just going to say, if we can't live on our love, we can certainly die from it.
Yeah.
And no, and I like that next line. And if unfit for tombs and hearse our legend be, it's almost like, and even if our love story isn't something that you would put on a tomb or a hearse, so again, there's that image of death, it will be fit for verse. And like, I think that's where like verse is either song or poetry or something that's written in, like, immortalized in like written form. Yeah,
keep going. That's 100% what I would say, for sure.
And if no piece of chronicle we prove, I'm not sure, we'll build in sonnets pretty rooms. Well,
so yeah, again, who do you write sonnets, chronicles about? Like, think of big chronicles, not like a chronicle newspaper,
like history, something to chronicle.
And who do you often write chronicles about, and what type of people?
The landed gentry that lived. So usually you write about, historical figures, kings, queens, army generals. I'm thinking about
warriors.
Warriors,
like Achilles and Odysseus. And Dante.
So basically, you don't write about men in love.
Not like this. Yeah, exactly. Not especially not their love. Yeah. So and if no piece of chronicle we prove, like if we don't prove worthy of that, then what will they do?
We'll build in sonnets pretty rooms. Like we'll make in sonnets pretty rooms. Like we will live in poetry. We might be immortalized by poetry and live in that.
100%. Yeah. And we'll build in sonnets. And I like how he uses pretty rooms. Like it's not epic necessarily. It's like I picture something a little smaller, like
dainty.
What's that?
Dainty.
Yeah. And but it's not like some epic mansion that they live in. It's like a little cottage in the woods type thing that they're going to build with their poetry. As well, a well-wrought urn becomes the greatest ashes as half-acre tombs. Now, half-acre tombs is something more like what you would give to an epic soldier, right? Like an Achilles would get like a half acre to his tomb.
Oh, I see. Right.
Like that's the kind of, I think, that what they're saying. You don't give half acres, so this is for like the kings, like you're saying. So they're not going to get a half-acre tomb for their love.
Right. Yeah. But he has the poetry that, and by these hymns, like, sorry, how do you pronounce that word?
Hymns. You got it.
Yeah. Again, so a hymn is something that you like sing or write down. So the poetry, he's still like another reference.
And something you would do in church, right?
Yeah, in church.
Church
exactly,
hymns.
Yeah. So I'm like, I will write the poetry that will like as a monument to them and their love. Or like,
that's how I look at it. Yeah, for sure.
All shall approve, it's canonized for love. And then the ones that all shall approve, all the people who read it, I'm guessing the readers.
And have you been to church before?
I have.
You're heathen.
Yes.
I have. I'm I'm an atheist, but I have been to church a a few times, and
Likewise.
So you get a hymn book, right? So you get a hymn book,
course. Yeah.
And you sing to the saints. This is the idea of hymnals and sing. And he's saying, by these that he will have these sonnets will be hymns that all shall approve as canonized for love. Like, so they will be the saints of love. So he's been comparing that they're not going to be the epic war heroes, the generals. You're not going to, we're not going to write our love on an urn, but we will put it into hymns and poetry that will last forever, like you're saying. And I do think, like, when he says, we could die by it at the beginning, he's kind of moved away a little bit from the little death into more the immortal death. Although I always see it, both of them in all of these things, but he's, even if we don't live by law, he's now talking about the holy aspect of everything, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else in here in this stanza? Or we go to the last stanza?
Yeah. Well, he brings in the canonization. It's kind of ends it with the word "us canonized for love."
Yep.
And it's all suddenly becoming much clearer.
And now the last stanza. Okay. So now we're getting to his conclusion. So what do we got here? Want to go for it?
Yeah. And thus invoke us, you whom reverend love made on another's hermitage, you to whom love was peace that now is rage, who did the whole world so contract and drove into the glasses of our eyes, so made such mirrors and such spies that they did all to you epitomize, countries, towns, courts, beg from above a pattern of your love.
All right. So we just learned about hymns and like being in church and singing a hymn to a saint. So that's, I think, what he means by invoke us. So what is he saying they're going to, because this is all quoted. So this is like what the hymn will be, right? So we're going to be canonized. This is what I think he's saying. This is what they will kind of not sing these exact words necessarily, but the hymn will represent this. And what is he saying? You the canonized
well, so when people want to pray to us, the newly canonized saints.
Yeah, that's all.
This is what. Okay.
That's all I'm taking it. But maybe, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. That's invoke us. You whom reverend love made one another's hermitage. So this is what they will say. Oh, so okay. So you two, the lovers.
Yeah.
Made one another's hermitage.
Hermitage?
No, I don't.
Okay. It's okay. So I have to look up these words all the time. So I have a lot of this stuff already written down, looked up. Okay. So that's why I'm cheating, but I have to look up these words. I also have my phone dictionary at all times. So there's nothing wrong if you don't know exact meanings.
Well, no. So everything. I'm thinking.
You know what a hermit is, though? I'm sure, right?
Yeah. So, hermit is someone who
lives alone and out in the jungle or something, or out in the forest.
Yeah.
Yeah, by themselves, like they're a hermit. But a hermitage, I think in this case, he's actually referring.
Chapel.
Yeah, something, but for like monks, for religious people, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's for a religious person in this case, whom you reverend love. It's that's how I take it, right?
Yeah,
that's how I think. That's what I think he's saying. So he's saying, you whom reverend love, and the Christian church does say they reverent love. They always talk about the love of Christ, right? So he's saying, if you loved, if you really do love reverence love, made one another's hermitage, in your private chapel, you to whom love was peace, that now is rage. What do you think that might mean? And so I think I'm mixing up this thing. I apologize before you answer that, because I think I'm screwing this up a little bit. So I think when he says you, he's actually referring to the two of them as a canonized saint. So like you, the saint. I think that's what. So I might have mixed that up a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that does. Yeah. So
okay.
You to whom love was peace, that now is rage. So you two lovers, canonized as one or two saints, who found like peace in love. Yeah.
I mean, it's a simple.
Yeah. And then.
Now the rage is kind of confusing.
Yeah. So is that more like passion?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's more passion.
Anger, more like you two lovers who found peace in love that is now caused like passion between you two.
Yep. Yeah. It's, the total aspect of their love.
Yeah.
Where there's love, peace, and rage, right? There's passion, there's peace, there's calm, and then there's the holy aspect. So all of those, I think, are combined into one. That's how I think of it. But yeah. And rage is, it's that kind of complicates it, because in our era, we only think of rage as fury. as anger,
Yeah.
but rage has a much broader meaning than that. Okay, what else? Who did the whole world's soul
Who
contract?
did the whole world's soul contract? I really like that line.
Me
So
too. Yeah.
you who like contract made like the world's soul shrink or something, like
Into what?
and drove into the glasses of your eyes. So a reflection.
Yeah.
Glasses, reflection.
Yeah. No, you're right. Like,
like mirrors and glasses. So there's, I don't know what he's referring to here. See, like
it's a weird one for sure. It's one of his weird ones, but I think he's saying something like,
you two who found peace in love, and that love caused this passion. You who shrunk or contracted the world's soul and drove into the glasses of your eyes. Like, no, I'm struggling.
You're so close, but like, yeah. So like, if you look at the whole thing, so made such mirrors and such spies that they did call you to epitomize countries, towns, courts, right? So the whole world.
So like you made the whole, like you made each other.
You got it.
You started being the whole world for
yeah. Yeah, you are the entirety of the universe, and in love, right? The two, like, you know, and he does this in other poems where he compares them to the universe in a sense, and that their coupling is the universe, right? Like it's states, it's countries, it's kingdoms, it's the United States of America, right? Like all of that is combined in their love, like together, in their togetherness, and their combination. They are the world, and he contracted it down. He contracted this massive universe into the emotional, you know, physical experience of these two people.
Yes.
So yeah.
Okay, and then so make such mirrors and such spies that they did all to you epitomize. And so made such mirrors and such spies that they did all to you epitomize. Is it like people will say to us, like, how did you, like, we want to know how you know, like we want to know a love like yours, or how did
I think that's it. Okay. You know, I mean,
like, how did you
do it, right?
Do it,
so made such, you know, into the glasses of your eyes, so and drove into the so they contracted the whole world and they put it into each other. And again, this is a metaphor, obviously not literal, not glasses in your eyes, but like just like in love, you represent you know, fall in love with the mirror of your own values type idea.
Yeah,
I think that's what's going on here, right? And he's saying, who did the whole world's soul contract and drove into the glasses of your eyes, like looking at each other. So when he looks at her, he sees all the countries, towns, courts. She sees that in him, and you know, the whole world. And then he says in parentheses, so made such mirrors and such spies, like people who spy on you, that they did call to you epitomize, like the perfect example is what epitomize means. Like you are the ideal example of what love is, or what the world is, what it could be. Beg from above pattern for your love, you know, which is this idea of you're now that these people seeing you, you're patterned. They're patterning. They should pattern their love off your love. You know, just like that's what an ideal is, right? Like if we have an ideal of Jesus, we pattern our lives on his life. That's what we should do. Well, that's what the canon, the saints are all about, is that these are the people you should pattern your life on. Well, now he's saying this is the couple you should pattern your love on.
Yeah. And beg from above a pattern of your love. Very nice. And also, just to like throw it back to the first line where he says, for God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. I mean, I don't know if there's any connection here, but like he's asking, so at the beginning, he's telling the person, you know, keep quiet and let me love. And then he finishes it off again with like a reference to something verbal that people will beg for the secret to love between me and my lady.
Yeah. And I think, you know, so now looking at the total and trying to think about what he is saying about love that is unique, or maybe it's not unique, but just what he's saying. is, we have this whole thing where he's talking about, I'm old and, leave me alone. But I think there's this idea that he's responding to that's kind of implicit in a lot of this. That it's like, although I'm old, I'm still capable of love. Love is not, this is how I think of it. Love is not merely this thing for young people, right? Like, it's not just for passion. Love is much more than just passion. And he's going to talk about how it's more than passion overall. What you will approve, so you will let me love. Call us what you will. We are made. And I think it starts here in this paragraph where he talks, he goes from, the pernicious sexual appetites of a fly to the burning passion of a candle, which are cliches that we would say about young love, that it burns out like a candle, right? That's what young love is generally. That's how we think of it. But he is then adding all of these other metaphors that go with it. Eagle and the dove, the phoenix, two sexes into one. But then he's adding this holy element. So you were mentioning throughout the whole thing, this, when you were looking at die and, the death that they were talking about, you didn't know about the little death of medieval orgasm. But I think so you associated it with actual death and rebirth as in the Christian immortality. And I think that's true. You're right. Both are correct. That's my point. And that's why sometimes people get frustrated with poetry, is that both can be correct.
Absolutely.
But you were correct. You were not wrong at all. That is there. That is a big part of what he's saying. Right. We can live and die by love. And he basically builds this whole argument in a poetic sense, right? A poetic argument for why their love, this love between this middle-aged man and whoever he's in love with, he doesn't say, which I think makes it interesting too, because it could be a young girl, could be, a 16-year-old girl at this time, because that did happen, right? Like 50-year-old men falling in love with and marrying, much younger women. But it could have been someone more closer to his own age, a 30-year-old widow or something. It's possible. We don't know. And I think that's what's interesting too, is it is a completely male poem about love. We have the woman is not at all, she's just the object. And it could represent, and it could be any woman. So I think that's one thing that makes this real fine art, is that it can, especially from a masculine perspective, is it can stand for love in any point. Although, I don't know, do you think it could stand, like, if you just reversed it and added she as the narrator, so it's coming from a she, could this all be the same thing from a woman's perspective? And then the man is just kind of some object of her affections?
Well, I mean, I think it would work just as great. I would have loved it. Well, I mean, considering the time, that it probably wouldn't, but if it was possible, I think it would read just as well.
And because it's about, so I agree. I think it's about love universally and about that affection.
When just to the point that what you were saying, it almost feels like maybe he was sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like mocked for his love, maybe because of his age or whatever. But he goes on to say that, yes, love is not just for, young people, and it's like its power is so strong and transformative, and, like true lovers are canonized by their love, like wholeheartedly devoted to like each other.
And he basically also, I think in the section where he's talking about these questions about loving and overflowing, is, this is his version of almost mocking what is that the view that the love is the entirety of the world that you might get in love poetry at this time. I think that's one thing. So again, Donne is very of his time. That's one thing that makes him a little challenging, and why I would say, read him for yourself and then get a little bit of critical analysis, because it's help, when you like to help you with it, because it's very hard to understand what he's saying all the time. Right.
No, absolutely.
But he's definitely, and there's nothing wrong with that. That'll help you get more out of it. And once you understand, helps you understand the era, and that there is a universality to this, because he's making fun of, in a sense, with these paragraphs here, with a stanza, this whole concept of love being this all-consuming, powerful thing, and outside of the lovers, like it has an impact on the whole world. And there were poets at the time who made those kind of analogies and metaphors. And he's saying, that's not true. That's all ridiculous. I've never added to a plague bill. People still do this, though she and I love, that changes nothing in the external world. Mm-hmm. But it's holy, right? It's this grand, epic adventure type thing, or this holy experience. So summing up Donne's argument for love here, and what we talked about earlier, if there's any relationship between the two, I wonder if what you might think about that. So John Donne is definitely advocating for love of any age, right? At any age. So it's doesn't matter how old you are, you could still experience love. But it's called the canonization. So he's making it this Christian, Catholic, holy experience. Mm-hmm. And that I think is interesting, right? Because he also talks about physical part of it, which is not something you get, in my experience, with the Christian view of sex and love. So this seems very different to me than how I learned from Christianity about marriage, love, and things like that.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I don't know. Was he a religious man? I don't know anything, but he was. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess maybe he was trying, well, like you said, he was very ahead of his time. I mean, quite rebellious, not rebellious, but I guess a bit of a maverick. And
it is interesting, right?
Yeah.
Well, let me add this piece of information.
The times.
Oh no, considering the times, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, considering the times in which it was written, he's a religious man, quite courageous to use a religious term such as canonization, and then, have references to flies who are known to be, to mate a lot with different with each other, and and also just the fact that the age comes into play, and he's so consumed by passion and love and this woman, again, at a time when maybe love wasn't, it was something that people didn't believe in. It was frivolous, and people didn't have time for stuff like that because, I mean, I'm intrigued by some of his other poetry now. I just want to read a little bit more about.
Yeah, read The Flea for sure.
Yeah.
The Flea by John Donne. I mean, I would get a book of his. He has really interesting things to say. But what I was going to add a second ago. Oh, go ahead. Before I go.
No, I was just going to say, but at the same time, I always feel like it doesn't even have to be a poetry from, the 1600s. Like you could, it's so timeless even today. If you are, say, middle-aged, or even not even middle-aged is very young in today's society, but even older than that,
Well, middle age is the middle of your life. It could be 60 that middle age is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're saying 50 is still young, that's true. But the point of middle age is that you're at the middle of the point. So middle age is probably it's probably actually like 40. We don't like to admit it, but 40 is probably middle age. Because you're probably going to die around 80.
Yeah. But no, just how timeless it is. Again, love. Love is for all ages, and that passion, and the fact that he's referring to sex. Again, even today, not so much as, of course, in the 1600s, but there is maybe this notion that, when you're older, you don't really care about love, you don't care about sex, you don't experience that same spectrum of emotions, and the truth is that you do, and
maybe you can.
Or you can, of course.
Maybe not everybody does, unfortunately.
And definitely, don't suppress that if you can. Very, very charged poem, but also, there's some kind of finality to it as well.
So let me add one thing. Let me see what you think. Yeah. So this was published posthumously. So he wrote a lot of his poetry, and it wasn't published at his time, maybe because of the things he said, because it was so rebellious. It was published after he died.
Oh, that makes sense now.
Yeah, so it makes even a little more sense, because it's something he didn't want to deal with, maybe. I don't know much about his biography, so I don't know. But it is rebellious because he is, the Catholic Church has, and the Christianity has generally associated sex for procreation purposes only. And the love of matrimony is supposed to be a love more dutiful. It's more about duty and doing your duty. And so, for instance, they would make arguments to women that it's your job to be aroused and have sex with your man, even if you don't want to. It's your job, essentially. It's your duty as a woman in a marriage, right? And here he's making it much more this, I think, symbiotic, passionate love on both sides. At least I hope that it's on both sides. We don't get her perspective, unfortunately. But
no, and also, I mean, is she even his wife? Because if she's not,
we don't even know that.
We're like, he's definitely living in sin there. Well, they both.
Well, and I think he did go through a phase of that, where I do think I remember something like that, where he went through some kind of phase of dating women, or sleeping with women that weren't his wife, which I think was kind of common. They just didn't talk about it. So I think there's a lot of that stuff in there, and it's an interesting, I like it because it's this interesting perspective on, the immortality of love has to be built on poetry, right? And I think it requires poetry, and that's one of his arguments, and that or hymns, and that makes it exalted and eternal. And I will say, as like a recipe for something that is more love versus just lust, is I like poetry in that regard, in terms of making those connections between two people and building little rooms for each other. Now I will say it, not because not everybody likes poetry, or they're not exposed to it correctly, but I'll say the parallel today is modern music. And one of the things I've noticed observing people either in love or talking to them, or dating or whatever, is the absolute critical importance that both parties tend to put on making some kind of connection through music, through our song. We have to have our song, right? That's so important. I think that's the same kind of idea that he's also saying here, is that there's not only immortalizing to the rest of the world as a pattern for love, but also inside the relationship, the importance of those kind of connections and building pretty little rooms together. Now, for me, I'll just say it's my secret in love is poetry. I'm going to do that with a woman, with poetry and literature and painting. And unfortunately, one of the challenges, I'll be honest, that's difficult is that, I always have to teach a woman that, because they're not raised in that. And so it's not something that, comes naturally to what comes naturally to most people is music and pop music, which I like pop music, but I don't tend to have as deep of a connection as many, women that I've dated, and so, or women out there that I've spent time with. So it's an interesting, I don't know, have you had that experience with the importance of, I don't know how personal you want to get, but
I mean, of course, but I mean, songs for sure. But even, it's almost like just inside jokes, inside references. I think all of that fits into
building your own
even
world.
like non-verbal communication, like when you really know someone quite well, and there's a lot to be said for non-verbal communication between two people that can just look at each other and like a million things are said. So I don't know if that it falls under
well, I guess we're saying slightly different things. So I agree that that's part of it. I guess what I'm saying is like, that's what you're saying is that we have these nonverbal communications, that's part of the world of love that you're in. I think that's 100% correct. There's, you're at a party and someone's saying something, like your partner's saying something that's a little weird, and you give them like a look, right? Or you give her a look, like, hey, you're making an ass of yourself right now. Stop. And you could do, or like, supportive too. Like, and you're kind of, there's these nonverbal cues, or like someone says something and you guys had a passionate experience with something, with whatever they're talking about, and you have that nonverbal cue with each other that you share experience in that moment. 100%. I agree with that. It's one of the great things about relationships and love, right? Is that connection. I guess I'm saying something slightly different, although related, which is the method of connecting. And like, so the method, the ization, with the process, canonization, the creation of the love comes through poetry. The connection happens because of poetry and the immortal. That's what I'm saying. Yes. Does that make sense?
It does. To answer your question, then in that respect, no, I probably haven't.
Really? But with music you have.
Yeah, well,
that's
music, but music is something that's a little like, yeah, I mean, I think when you're like, maybe when I was a teenager, not recently. But that's because music just feels like so much more profound when you're a teenager and you're in love, and
good point. Very, yeah.
and then again, and I'm not saying that it's because you get old and cynical and you don't enjoy music, but it's just, it doesn't strike you as much, because music, a lot of pop music is quite like limiting, or maybe you will enjoy like one verse from a song and the rest is garbage, so you don't want to,
especially if you don't want to what? I'm sorry.
So you don't want to like tie that whole song to your relationship, because they might be just like that one line that you like, and that's like,
you don't want to tie the whole thing to your relationship and say, wait a second, they're talking about murdering people on the street. Exactly. I agree. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I guess I would, even if I could say something as a person who likes art, and I know you like art, like my view of the problem with the pop music thing and making connections just on that is that it tends to be somewhat superficial. I think that's what you're saying. So you can feel something, and when you're young and it's very abstract and you haven't experienced life, it's easy to have these really profound connections. And you could easily be at the sway of a concert, see someone, have that feeling, that vibe, and you're feeling it, and boom, and you get there and you're like dancing, and then you're making love. And then it's like this passionate thing, like the stars and everything are aligned. And it's such an intense emotion, and it's wonderful, right? That's why you fall in love with love in a sense at these early ages. But my point, and what I think is so profound about literature and art in this poem, is that if you stay in that realm, that kind of superficial realm, then you're doing yourself a disservice to the holiness. Now, I would say not Christian holiness, I would say secular holiness that love is capable of creating. And that is why personally, I'm such an advocate of poetry, painting. Like just again, another personal thing for me is like, and why I'm so passionate about bringing this to other people, because I think this is important for having more deep connections. And for me, like, I don't need like if I date a woman, that she has to be like this poetic, art knowledgeable person, but she has to be capable of getting there. That's important. And we'd have to be able to make some connections early on through art on some level. Every relationship I've had that has had any semblance of real passion, and there's been a few, it's always because of poetry on some level. Like, it's always like, that's part of it. That's a big part. And I was just going to say, it's great that you know what that like main big filter is for you, because a lot of people don't. Yeah.
And it makes it so much easier. I mean, it doesn't make it easier because maybe the pool from which you can find partners gets smaller, but it's great because you know exactly what you're kind of like looking for, that maybe initial thing. But I'm not saying that you would potentially discriminate, or maybe you would, whatever, in any
well,
case.
If you're incapable is what I'm saying. So I'm not saying like, so most of the women I've dated, I've made them more into poetry lovers, right? Like, I mean, I don't know if anybody could ever imagine coming out of a relationship with me or being in a relationship with me and not enjoying poetry. Like, you would suffer, your life would suck. But my point is even broader. And I think it's interesting. So I mean, if you find this interesting, I don't know if you find this interesting. I hope everybody else does. Do you find it interesting, the idea of connecting through something like this?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
So what I'm trying to get at is that, you're saying that I have made a value of poetry and that's something that I require. I'm saying that you need to find something, and the arts are the most important thing, where you do have these connections. So let me give you another example in another pop realm where people do this. So what I said earlier was that people do this with music anyway. That's a natural thing where people find connections and the connections they feel, like when you are vibing with someone and you're dancing the same thing. That's why music is so often the cliche of connection, because that is the only connection people can experience. I'm saying it's not that I love poetry. That is where it's what I'm saying is that because I'm human is why it's, and you as a human need to find these other connections through arts to have deeper connections. It's not something that's just Kirk. This is universal. That's my argument. And another example of this is movies, right? So a lot of people have had this experience. I think guys more than girls, but not always, where a guy will watch a movie with a girl that he loves. And like at certain moments, he'll like look over, like kind of glance over at her, right? And it's not just because he finds her so beautiful, although that's probably part of it, but it's also because he wants to see her reacting and how she reacts. So that's the other thing, like how you react. That's what the mirror of love is. That's the mirror. It's like you're reacting in the same way that I see myself reacting.
Yeah, yeah.
And
absolutely.
That's the connection. So my point is that it's not a Kirk thing. This is a universal human thing.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I definitely agree, and probably have done that myself. Like, you know, if I put my favorite like film on or whatever, you know, giving someone a book or, you know, that I loved and kind of wanted, you know, and then you're kind of like waiting, like, oh, you know, what's their reaction going to be like? You know, are they going to yay or nay it? Are they going to get that reference? You know, are they going to be moved by the same passage, you know, as I was? And that all comes back to like, you know, like the mirror, like you said, and be like being seen in the like things that you can't see your own soul, but you can see another person. And if the similar things resonate with them as they do with you, then it's almost like, you know, that's what you call it, like a kindred spirit, right? So that's like, you know, that's my soulmate. That's kind of essentially what it is. We're vibing on the same things.
Vibing on the same things. I think vibing is universal.
To bring it from 16th, 17th century poetry to 21st century slang, we're vibing on the same things.
You got to vibe on the same thing. I think that's a great place to end it. I know this is a little longer, but I thought it was such an interesting topic. I hope people enjoyed a little bit of a longer episode. I hope you enjoyed it, Maria.
Very much so. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And make sure you join in to more Artful Tuesdays. See you next time.